Good morning. It is July 20th on a calendar near you, and today we are going to do a $200 salary cap mock auction draft. And the template for today is going to be quarterback heavy. Of my $200 budget, I am bringing right around $30 to the table for my quarterback, which means I want one of the top 4 going into the season. So my players to watch: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, and Jaden Daniels. I've got $70 set aside for my top 2 running backs, $80 set aside for wide receiver 1 and 2, and with this template, that leaves me $8 to spend on tight end. With each top player selected, the supply and demand changes, which means the market changes, which means the economics change, which is why these auction drafts are an absolute blast. As we select from one category, we'll watch the amount we're willing to spend on another category go up and down. You'll see my other players to watch are at the tight end position. So with a quarterback heavy draft, we are going to sacrifice the amount of money spent on tight end. But we still need a good tight end. I have never had a fantasy team that I've really liked when I'm getting 6 and 7 points a week at tight end position. So we are foregoing those top 3 tight ends in a Brock Bowers, in a Trey McBride, and a George Kittle, and I am really trying to get that next tier with a Mark Andrews, in which case I'm going to try to handcuff him with Isaiah Likely, a TJ Hawkinson, and hoping to God he stays healthy, and then Tucker Kraft, who I keep seeing some of the underground experts saying this is his breakout year. For this mock draft and the others that I will do, I am using the Draft Wizard on fantasypros.com, and I am doing the draft on my own time and then coming back and doing the commentary just to make this video more watchable. For this video and other mock draft videos, I will be using a simulation with 11 computer-generated teams, and that allows me to go at my own pace and skip through players that I know I will not be bidding on or cannot afford. You can do a mock draft with 11 other human users, which I prefer because the computer is going to stick to suggested values the best that it can given the current market as the draft goes along, which kind of takes out a little bit of strategy. For instance, one of my favorite strategies to do is to nominate perhaps a second or third tier player that I like while those top tier players are still on the board. For instance, let's take a TJ Hawkinson, for example. Let's say his suggested value is $12 and you're in your draft with actual humans. Now, if I nominate him for $8, a lot of other people may not bid on him while Brock Bowers is still on the board, while George Kittle is still on the board, while Trey McBride is on the board. So a lot of times I can get him for closer to $8 or $9 versus once those top tier players are off the board, I don't want to say a panic necessarily sets in, but a goddamn panic sets in. And now the other human users believe that, hey, I do need a tight end. And sometimes the market on TJ Hawkinson goes up to $14, $15, $16 just out of desperation because the better players are off the board. So if you nominate early while better players are on the board, sometimes you can confuse the market of the other people in the room and get the player you want cheaper. Parts of this video have been sped up to save my time and yours. I am going to log off the camera and just commentate. So pause as needed. Pause right now, take a screenshot if you like what you're seeing, and enjoy the video. All right, so first nomination is Ja'Marr Chase. I go ahead and pass on him just because I got $80 set aside for receiver, and he's going for over 60. So Puka Nacua, I like him. I think he's going to be a target hog this year, and he's kind of in that range, going through mid 40s. So if I can get him even anywhere below 50, I still have $30 set aside for that number 2 wide receiver. So So Derrick Henry is quickly out of my budget. I'd like to spend mid-30s on both running backs if possible. As soon as he, goes up in the 50s, I'm hitting pass. Malik Neighbors comes in. Again, I'm a little bit budgeted now because I spent 47 on Puka, so no more than low 30s for the next wide receiver. Okay, so my turn to nominate. I'm going to go ahead and put Josh Allen out there. That way I can see what is the rest of my draft going to look like after spending on Josh Allen. A quick look at the board. I got Josh Allen for $31, so just $1 more than the $30 I had set aside for quarterback. And then I got Puka on the board there at 47. So that $1 deficit needs to come from somewhere. At this point, it's too early to tell where. I just need to account for it. So these next dudes are dogs, but I just can't afford them. They're too rich for my blood. I will bid on them while they're still in my budget just to make sure that nobody's getting them at a discount. I can't have these other clowns loading up their rosters for cheap while I'm sitting here just saving my pennies. So bid on them while you can until you get to the next guy. So Ashton Jeanty is a guy that I didn't really plan on or target coming into this draft. This is just a guy that I was bidding up to get him into that mid-40 range before I passed on him, and then he ended up on my roster at a pretty good price. I don't love Ashton Jeanty just because of the situation. Yes, he's a workhorse. However, the Raiders ran 79 yards per game last year, which has got to be historically bad, about 20 yards behind the second worst in the league, and over 100 yards per game behind the Baltimore Ravens, and right about that for the Eagles as well. What they do in the offseason, obviously they got Jeanty. They have Geno Smith, so at least a competent quarterback that can run an offense with Pete Carroll. That offensive line did not get much better. They spent the 98th pick of the draft, so round 3, on Caleb Rogers, a guard from Texas Tech, who's going to be a backup for the Raiders. And then they spent the very next pick 99, on Charles Grant, who's a offensive tackle out of William & Mary, who's also going to be a backup. They did sign someone they plan to start at guard in Alex Kappa. Alex Kappa had a couple very good seasons with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and then if you remember Joe Burrow just getting absolutely drug out on the street and stomped down in the Super Bowl, the Bengals went out and signed Alex Kappa, who had one good year and then had an ankle injury, and then the next 2 years, so like 23 and 24, he was rated by, I believe, PFF as right around 60 and 62 out of 62 qualifying offensive guards, and then was released by the Bengals as a cap casualty before being signed by the Raiders. So not a massive upgrade at guard, I imagine, to the one of the worst offensive lines in football. In the second round, they got Jack Beck, I'm not sure, but I do like him, the wide receiver out of TCU. So hopefully they can loosen the box, and get some of these safeties a little bit back to give Jeanty some running room. So at $38, $39, I will take him as my RB1, and we're hoping for the best. Added Chuba Hubbard, not to be confused with L. Ron Hubbard of Scientology. Chuba is exactly what I'm looking for in this template. Since I spent more on quarterback, I am skipping on Jahmyr Gibbs and some of the other studs at the top. But Chuba coming off just under 1,200 yards rushing, 10 tutties, and another 40-plus receptions last year. Panthers reward him with a fourth-year, $33 million contract. This is exactly what I'm looking for to fill out this template. I would have liked Courtland Sutton. He got just a tad expensive since I have not yet secured a tight end. So My turn to nominate. We're going to go Tucker Kraft. Tucker had 50 catches last year for just over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. I am not drafting him for those numbers. I am crossing my fingers and hoping that he can improve on those. So, concern for me is just every time you watch a Packers game, they seem to have a new favorite wide receiver. Hopefully Matthew Golden can bring some stability to the outside or in the slot, which he played a lot of at Texas, just kind of finding that open space. Hopefully Tucker can be a consistent drop-off for Jordan Love. People like Kraft actually because of his depth of target at 10 yards per, which is pretty high, especially for a tight end. Hopefully there's no regression there. But again, hopefully he can be a staple. Hopefully he can bring that 7 touchdowns to double digits and just be the go-to guy in the red zone while also moving the chains. So fingers crossed on Tucker Kraft. So right now we are sitting and waiting and passing over a lot of players, which is why we have computer-generated competitors instead of having actual real people bid these things out. So right now, I'm really looking for a decent wide receiver 2, and when it's my turn to nominate here, we're going with DJ Moore. This is going to be kind of like Tucker Kraft, where I am not hoping for last year's numbers. I'm looking for that big step forward with Ben Johnson coming over from Detroit. The nightmares are emerging as far as what Caleb Williams had for a rookie season and not even having a coach to watch film with. Hoping that DJ and Caleb can bunk up together and watch some damn film, and let's get this guy open. Let's get him in the end zone. Jesus Christ. All right, so just a quick audio overview of our template. We had $31 spent on Josh Allen, $38 on Genty, $34 on Chuba, $47 on Puka, so meaning we had another $33 set aside for wide receiver 2 in order to have that $80 between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, and ended up getting DJ Moore at $16. So we got another $14. As of now, I am going to put that toward flex, so our starting flex player can be up to $21 spent. Again, assuming I'm going to spend $1 on each of the 5 bench players, $1 on kicker, and $1 on defense. And we had $6 on Tucker Kraft. Just landed RJ Harvey for my flex at $13 when I had budgeted $21, so we'll have an extra $8 to go toward the bench. RJ Harvey, some people think that maybe he can have an Alvin Kamara rookie-esque type season, just showing the kind of versatile back he is and coming into a Sean Payton offense that they seem to like and had, second round draft capital. I have concerns with him, but those concerns are kind of flushed down the toilet when you get him for $13 on that flex spot. Going to head towards wrapping up this video. For kicker and defense in the auction format, I like to nominate them a little bit earlier because remember, it's just a nomination. It's not a draft pick that you're sacrificing. So $1 nomination early on is as good as $1 nomination later. But if you can nominate them early, hopefully people in your league don't care to spend $2 on a defense. I don't think they should. They do, they will, but you are likely going to replace that defense or kicker as soon as their bye comes up. Rounding out this team ended up getting Ted McMillan, first-round pick by the Carolina Panthers at wide receiver for only $2, which is absolutely crazy. I am going to show you a graphic that I'm just putting together. I took average draft position based on Underdog's best ball drafts to kind of show you what this would look like had it been a traditional snake draft. So it's going to look kind of wonky. You're going to have, in this case, a couple first-round picks, no second-round picks, and then you'll just kind of see where this draft would fall had it been a snake draft. So again, I try to go top heavy. I want to get studs, and then I can fill in as we go. With the draft that I am practicing for, we have only 5 bench players, and we do this in order to keep some talent in the waiver wire each week. So that waiver wire, whether that be free agent auction dollars or just a traditional waiver wire, I'm going to be using to pick up the slack, probably in a flex position, or if in this case DJ Moore isn't quite what I wanted. I also on the bench, you'll see, got Jalen Waddle, great, just from a value standpoint, and then I took Tyler Warren at tight end, just as an insurance policy on Tucker Kraft. Of course, a risky insurance policy because he is a rookie, and I'm hoping, in the latter half of the season, he's really come into his own. So this wraps up this template. I'm going to do a couple more of them and then kind of try to compare through the season how this team compares to a template that maybe I took a stronger tight end and more of a streaming style at quarterback. And we're just going to kind of mix it up from there. So thanks for watching. Here's the shameless plug on the like and subscribe. And thanks again to sponsors, the Woods Transportation. Take care, everyone.